Good morning, everybody. Welcome to class 4. I am so hyped because today is the day where everything starts to kind of come together. Obviously, we've started with just the basics. We went into the what, the how. Now we're actually going into the meat and potatoes of this, which is the planets, and that tells us the whole story. So we've covered the signs, the houses, and now we're getting into the planets. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. I know a lot of you guys are not catching it live. You're watching the replay. I will say you have about 2 weeks after we wrap up the course for questions and follow-ups. And this is going to be its own little course that's going to live somewhere in the internet. But for now, feel free to send me emails just like you've been. I'll send you little videos back of any questions that you may have. I highly, highly recommend for the last 2 classes to be here while we're in the room so that you can ask questions live, because after that, I'm going to be closing the Q&A via email. For the people in the room, can you let me know if you can see my slides, love?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, let me see if I can pin so that it's at the top. Oh my gosh, okay. Color pin, here we go. Do you see me or do you see the slides?
I see the slides.
Beautiful. That's what I was hoping for. Awesome. Okay, so let's get into it. Today we're going to be talking about the planets. So I remember we went over the formula, the what, the how, the where. So the
Mhm.
houses obviously painted the picture of where these things are happening. The signs painted the picture of how we do these things. But then obviously the meat of the sandwich is what is it? What are we talking about? What does it represent? Why do we care? Right? So the planets in astrology, these are all the different parts of your personality and your life experience. This is basically the characters that you come to play. So the way that I put this lesson together was if I could personify a planet and tell you about them as a person and you get to know them, then you'll be able to say, oh, when this person is in this house, this is how they show up. So we're going to try to gamify it so that it clicks. But at the end, I'll save the questions for the end. So for the Q&A portion, then we'll go deeper into like how that applies specifically to you. Also for the slides, I made it so that we could go over all of the signs, but I don't want you to get stuck on the material that's on the screen. I want you to allow yourself to receive like the teaching portion of it, and then you can come back to the slides when you have time and look it up for you specifically. So there's a lot of information on the screen, but remember the slides are like a little job aid. I want you to be able to like learn it as a concept and not as a I research my thing and that's what I am, because I want you to understand it, not just to be able to look it up. But let's see. So let's start with the concept of how planets move. So the idea of planets in the concept of astrology as a whole is we're looking at the sky and we're looking at how the planets are moving throughout the days, the years, the months, etc. Right? So we know every planet orbits around the sun. So that is what sets the tone. Now, when the sun moves into a different constellation in the sky, that is when it moves into a different sign. So 2 days ago, we moved into Aries season. All that means is where the sun is currently at is sitting in the constellation of Aries, and all the planets are orbiting around it. Now, we need to understand how planets move because we keep hearing retrograde, Mercury retrograde, and this is retrograde, and that is retrograde. So, essentially, what it means is not that the planet is moving backwards. It means that the planet is moving a little bit slower. So, it changes the normal flow of how it moves, which makes it look like it's moving backwards because it's not where it's supposed to be, but eventually it resumes its own speed and it catches back up. So we're going to talk about the cycles of all the planets. How long do they take? When do they go retrograde? What does that mean? But you have to understand the basics of astronomy of like, this is the sun and these are all the planets orbiting around it, right? So starting with when energy is moving direct and when energy is moving retrograde. So retrograde doesn't mean backwards. It just means slower, different speed, and it changes till eventually it goes back to normal. So for a retrograde, there's usually what's called a shadow period. There's a shadow period before it starts, and there's a shadow period after it starts, which essentially tells us there's like a window before it fully changes speed, where it kind of gives you a heads up of like, hey, something is changing. So collectively, we feel it, but I'm going to go deeper into what that looks like for everybody. So when a planet is direct, the energy is moving forward and is expressed outward. So, for example, the sun and the moon never move backwards. They're always moving forward because everything orbits around the sun. So it doesn't matter where the sun goes, the planets are following it, right? The moon is kind of in the same way because the moon moves so fast that it can't go backwards. It literally changes every single day. It has one of the shortest cycles in astrology. Now, retrograde in astrology essentially means that the energy is moving inward. So instead of being expressed outward, we become more reflective. We become more introverted. We have time to reflect. It slows us down. It forces us to like reassess, revisit, sit with things and be like, is this working? Is it not? So the flow of energy, instead of being like the concept of like our first lesson of masculine versus feminine, think of a direct planet as like masculine energy, action driven, and a retrograde planet as like feminine energy, sitting with things. It's kind of sifting through stuff. So we're going to go through all of them, but we're going to start with the core identity, which is the sun. So the sun in your chart, this is probably the one that you hear about, that you know about, that everybody's like, oh my God, I was born in May, therefore I'm a Taurus. I was born in July, so I'm a Cancer. The concept of astrology and why we go into the big three and not just your sun is because if we just quantified it as like you're a Taurus, every Taurus should be the same. Every Gemini should be the same. That is not the case, right? So we care about where in your chart the sun is. So we talked about the houses last week. If you have your sun at the 10th house, you are more career driven. If you have your sun at the 4th house, you are more family driven. If you have your sun in the first house, you're very into yourself. So it doesn't matter where it is, it's more what is your identity? Where is your sun? Where is the core of who you are? And then how does that show up in your chart? And as I go along, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. And I can also address that as I go, specifically when I'm focusing on a planet so that we can keep them condensed to this part. So the sun in astrology rules the sign of Leo. So if you think about the sun as a concept, it's literally the center of the universe. Everything is orbiting around it. We discuss Leo and how Leo is very into themselves. It's because they are ruled by the sun. The world literally revolves around them. So that energy of who they are at their core, they are a big ass star that everything orbits around. So the sun in your chart also tells us what motivates you, what gets you excited. So hypothetically, being a Gemini sun, what gets me excited and what gets me hype is conversation, connecting with people, thinking deeply, right? Because these are the things that Gemini rules. So if your sun is in Libra, if your sun is in Taurus, if your sun is in Aquarius, you are going to be drawn to different things and different things are going to light you up. It's also the area of your life where you shine. Because if you think of the sun as the biggest, brightest star in the universe, this is the part of your chart, depending on where it is, where it's you, where you come alive, where like something just comes really natural for you. So at the end, I'm going to pull some charts, but if you want to drop in the chat your big three for me, just so I can remember and reference this as I'm going through. But hypothetically speaking, if the sun was a person, the sun would be a very confident Leo type person. They would be very expressive. They would be very warm. They would be very intense. They would be very comfortable taking up space because when you're used to things revolving around you, you don't shrink, you don't hide, you don't play small. You're constantly like, this is who I am. And everywhere that I show up, this is me. Hence why Leo is known as like a very confident sign. Mind you, I'm a Leo rising. This is where the confidence natally comes through, even though I'm not really doing anything other than like I'm comfortable in my own skin, right? So a Libra sun, for example, Libra rules relationships, right? It rules balance. It rules finding compromise among things. So they value relationships. They value connections. They're motivated by having a close circle. They feel really connected and they actually shine with people. They feel like they're very social. They go have really deep bonds. They're very good at like finding the balance, finding fairness, having conversations where everybody gets along. And you're motivated by relationships. So anybody with a Libra sun, anyone with Libra in their big three, yeah, no, relationships are very important to you and they need to be prioritized. So hypothetically speaking, the sun, Leo, that's kind of the visual that you need to get, but it's also who you are. And obviously your rising is the most important part because it's like how people see you, how you show up. But the sun is you, like at your deepest, deepest core is you. So my sun being in the 10th house, I'm a very communicative Gemini. I'm a very big personality, Leo rising, but then having it in the 10th house means that my career is an extension of my identity. I am motivated by success and being seen and making money and doing all these things, but it's the way that I was wired. Some people could not care less to be like on social media or to have a job or to make a lot of money. But since I was little, this has been something that has always motivated me and driven me. And it's because it's the way that I'm built. So notice in your chart what house and start to piece that together for yourself. Now, I did make slides around how the sun shows up in different signs. Again, don't get fixated on what it says on the screen. I want you to revisit the slides. That's why I built them that way. But I just want to show you the difference of the sun being in different signs and how that looks. So starting with the fire signs and the earth signs. So for the fire signs, their identity, which is the sun, is expressed through action and passion. When we discuss the elements in lesson 2, fire equals action, drive, desire, passion. So their identity, that's how it shows up, right? Earth signs, they express their identity, their sun, through stability and results. If you remember, Earth rules stability, groundedness, practicality, moving slow, having a plan, delivering results. So the way that they show up for the fire signs is they're bold, they're leaders, they're confident, they're passionate, they're direct, expressive. Now they have different flavors because Aries is the baby. So Aries will just be bold and jump into something. They're like, let's get it started, right? Leo, big, bold, confident, creative is fixed fire. It just holds that energy all the time. Sagittarius is mutable. So it sits there and it's optimistic, looking for freedom. They're a little bit more adventurous, but their identity and who they are, these are not people that you can contain. These are not people that are going to shrink. These are people that are going to do what they want to do when they want to do it boldly, loudly, and they don't care if people don't get it, right? Earth signs, on the other hand, they're coming through stability and groundedness. So Taurus, being the baby, is the most stubborn one. So they're very steady. They value comfort. They want safety in their home. Groundedness is important to them. Stability is important to them, but they move really, really slow. Virgo is more on the analytical. Remember, it's mutable earth. Is breaking it down, focusing on the details. They're constantly trying to make things better. So they have a very analytical mind. They focus on the little things. They're constantly trying to improve something. Capricorn, on the other hand, is a little bit more ambitious. It's a little bit more disciplined, goal-oriented. Remember, cardinal sign. They're here to drive things home, to get things started, but they're mature about it. So they have a plan. They have a goal. So depending on which of these you have, this is a core part of your identity. Now, if your sun is in air signs or water signs, they show up slightly different. So you're what? Libra sun. I know we have a Taurus sun in the room as well. So a Libra sun and a Gemini sun, although they're both air and they express through ideas and communication, they have different perspectives and they communicate differently. Gemini is the baby, is very surface level. So they're very curious. They can talk about all the things. They adapt. Remember, they're mutable. They're moving from thing to thing. Libra, on the other hand, is a cardinal sign. They want to initiate. Not only do they want to initiate, they want to find the balance. They want to get along. So their communication style is more diplomatic. Let's talk about the things nobody wants to discuss. They're more focused on relationships. People love them. They come across really charming and lovable. But again, they're teenagers. They're not babies. They have a little bit more groundedness about them. Aquarius, on the other hand, is too old. Like they're innovative and weird and they think, future oriented and they're quirky and they come at things with like a bigger perspective, right? Water signs, they show their identity through their emotions. So anytime you meet a water sign, these are people that are going to be more intuitive. They're going to be more emotional. They're going to be a little bit more intense also because they feel so deeply. They're not able to really suppress that, right? So when we're talking about the sun, this is a core part of who they are. So it doesn't mean every Taurus is the same. It doesn't mean every Pisces is the same. But they are all going to have a certain flavor of these type of traits. So for the water signs, we're talking nurturing, emotional, transformative, sensitive, etc. Now, the sun is your identity. So the way that I would write it on my notes is sun equals identity, and then whatever element Let's say sun is in fire sign. What does fire rule? Action, drive, passion. If it's air, communication, intellect. And then you start piecing it together for yourself. So now moving on to the moon. This is the second planet that is the most important because it never goes retrograde and it's a core part of your identity. Why? Because it's part of your big three. We've talked about your rising, sets the tone for the houses. Now we've discussed your sun. Now let's get into the moon, right? So the sun and the moon are luminaries. What they mean is they illuminate, they bring light to things, they highlight things. So the sun highlights the core of you. It's like if the sun is your heart and you're able to see who this person is, what motivates them. The moon is the deepest part of your heart, is your emotions, is your subconscious, is the deepest needs that you have. It is the innermost part, like the part of you that only people that know you or love you get to know, right? Now, the moon rules Cancer. So, if we talk about Cancer, which we've done in the past, they're very nurturing, they're very intuitive, they're very deep. They're giving like mommy energy. Like they naturally are the caretaker, they want to hold people together. So, again, with the example of the big three, me being a Cancer moon and a Leo rising, I have two luminaries in my big three. So big personality, also very emotional person. You might not see it on the surface, but once you get to know me, you're like, damn, Jordy has so much depth. That is because there's water and there's a luminary highlighting even more how soft and gooey I am on the inside, right? So if you have a moon in a water sign, you're probably going to be more amplified because obviously it's ruling a water sign. But the moon in astrology basically tells the story of how do you feel? How do you emote? What makes you feel safe? How do you feel nurtured? How do you nurture other people? How do you connect with someone? Like if the moon was a person, you're talking about like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Inside Out, sadness, how she feels all these feelings all the time. That is what the moon would look like in Cancer, right? These are sensitive, intuitive, very emotionally aware. They want to talk about feelings all the time. They're like, oh my God, we got it. Like, let's cry. Like, I joke and I say I make people cry for a living. It actually brings pleasure because Cancer, cardinal sign, talking about feelings. Now, depending on where you have your moon, your needs are different because even though it sounds like, oh my goodness, people just want to cry, people with a moon in a fire sign, they don't want to cry. They want to do something about it. They want to take action, right? People with a moon in an earth sign, they don't want to cry about it. They want to like hold in place and stay home. They want to understand. They want to process their feelings. People with their moon in an air sign, they want to communicate. They want to think it through. Water signs tend to be a little bit more emotional, but again, they emote in different ways. So when you're talking about your subconscious and the way that you process emotion, fire moons are going to react very quickly. So they're going to have really big tempers. They're going to be emotionally expressive. They need a little bit more emotional freedom because if you try to contain fire, it just gets hotter and it blows up, right? So these are people that will take a trip to go heal. There are people that will cuss somebody out and be like, oh, da, 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 and you're like, what is going on? And it's just their feelings got triggered and their response is to blow up on somebody like fire would, right? So Aries moon, I know we have one in the class, emotionally impulsive. Their feelings are just like a big baby. They blow up in the moment and then they're like a sour patch and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to pop off like that. Leo moon, remember, they're the sun. They need people to care. They need to feel admired. They need to feel appreciated. But their emotions are just as intense. They're like big drama, big warmth. They like make a big deal out of their feelings and people have to care. If they don't feel like you care about their feelings, they will cut you out of their lives. Sagittarius moon, these are people who probably will travel to heal, but they need freedom. They're so optimistic and joyful that when they're not feeling good, when they're not being appreciated, when they don't feel understood, they just want to run away. They just want to go be alone and find something new, a new hobby, a new person, and like start fresh, right? So Sagittarius moon, if you have that, you're a bit of a runner, and that's okay, but it's giving avoidant, right? So we process feelings differently, but we still need to process them. So with a fire moon, highly, highly recommend therapy or having friends that like ground you and are able to kind of talk you off the explosiveness, if you will. Now, if you have your moon in an earth sign, we're talking more grounded. We're talking comfort, being at home, processing your feelings. These people are almost like analytical. Like they don't even want to cry about it. They just want to like, okay, let's move on. What's the next step? So Taurus moon, they want comfort. They want physical affection. They want to slow down. They like pretty things. They're probably going to eat their feelings. That's the big Taurus thing. Virgo moon, they will analyze. They're going to think about what happened and why did he say this and why did she say that. But they also need reassurance that's like practical. Like, this is how we're going to fix it. This is how I'm going to improve my behavior, right? Capricorn moon, I think these are the people that have one of the toughest moons because it's so practical. They're all about like achievement and like accomplishing something. So it's so there's no emotion to be had. It's just a conversation of like, are you going to stay in my life? Like, what am I gaining out of being with you? How do we fix this? So Capricorn moon people tend to be a little bit cold, but they do care. They just care in a different way. They show care through actions. Like, these are the acts of service people, if you will. Now, when we're talking air and water, air is a mental process. We're talking communication and intellect. So the way they process their feelings is through talking. Gemini moons, they don't shut up. They're just gonna process and just like spit it out. It's gonna be like word vomit of like, this is how I feel and this is why. And eventually, through conversation, they're gonna hear themselves and be like, oh, I wasn't right. Or no, I'm validated in what I'm saying. Libra moon is more about harmony. They're looking for a little bit more connection. Remember, Libra rules relationships. They need to feel like we're all getting along, everything is fine. So if they don't have harmony with the people in their lives, in their home, in their career, it really affects their mental health. Because again, this is your subconscious. This is the deepest part of you. This is what keeps you sane. Aquarius moon, I also believe, is one of the hardest moons because they're detached. They're detached emotionally because they live so high up in their intellect that they don't have time for feelings. So these are people who need people in their lives who are going to ground them, first of all, but they need to get it mentally or it doesn't click. So Capricorn needs it to be practical and tactile and factual. Aquarius needs it to be like explained in like a I don't know, a thesis. Like, you have to write down a report explaining why it has to make sense. Water moons, on the other hand, they're more emotional, but again, emotions are untamed. So you could overflow in emotion. Cancer moon is not that deep. Yes, we cry about things, we feel all these things, but it's like shallow water. Like, once you get to the bottom, it's like, okay, I cried, I feel better. Scorpio moon is fixed water. It's like a lake. So it gets really dark and murky under there. So Scorpio moons, they're very private. They don't share a lot. They're very intense, but they have really deep traits of like, uh, I own you, or like, this is mine. Like, these are the people that will like stew and plan a revenge for 5 years and then murder somebody. I know it sounds intense, but it is Scorpio. They rule the eighth house, right? Pisces moon, they get lost in their feelings. It's like an ocean. Sometimes it's calm, but then sometimes they're so deep that somebody physically has to pull them out. For a Pisces moon, being artistic and creative is really valuable. Neptune is in there to kind of get over all of the illusions because if they get stuck in their feelings, it's really hard to pull them out. So I also recommend if you have a water moon, therapy is really, really valuable for you. Now I'm going to move through the other ones a little bit faster for the sake of time, but the big three are the most important. I also want you to kind of follow with the others as like, oh, this is what this says about me, right? So the sun, core of your identity, the moon, my emotions, the deepest part of myself. Now we're going to talk big picture, right? Because there's a lot of things that we need in order to step into like adulthood. Like, we need to learn how to speak and we need to learn how to think and like how to be autonomous. So that's where Mercury comes in. So Mercury is a planet that rules Gemini and Virgo. And based on those two signs, which are pretty different, right? They're both ruled by Mercury, but they're very different expressions of the same thing. Gemini is very surface. We're going to talk about everything. This is fun, yada, yada. Virgo is like, we're going to dissect everything. We're going to understand everything. We're going to like sit with the details and go really deep. So they're both deep. They're both inquisitive. They're both going really, really deep. They just do it in different ways. Gemini does it through conversation. Virgo does it through intellect. But Mercury rules both of those things. So if Mercury was a person, Mercury would look like this guy. He would literally sit in the corner and he would just be observing. but his mind will be going a million miles an hour, like profiling the person. And this is how they think. They would have a very curious mind, like Gemini. Like, what does that mean? And why did you do that? And why did we start there? But they also would be very observant. They wouldn't miss much, right? So for you in your chart, Mercury is the place that shows how you think. It also shows us how you speak. It also shows us how you process information. So if you, for example, have Mercury in Taurus, you probably talk really slow or really deliberately, or you say what you mean and mean what you say. But if you have Mercury in Aries, you just word vomit whatever comes into your mind because you're very impulsive. You're just trying to get it out. If you have Mercury in Aquarius, you have a very unique way that you speak or a very particular way that you think. So, anywhere Mercury is in your chart, we want to look at the sign. How do I do it? So, for you, Scorpio Mercury, very deep. There's nothing surface about what I'm saying. When I'm saying something is because I'm trying to get underneath it and I'm trying to really understand it to a point where like it feels like I get it, right? But again, you also think very deeply. You don't just say things in a sharp way, you also go very deep. The second thing we want to look at is what house is it in? Because, for example, my Mercury natally is in the 10th house. Again, my house of career, right? So I do speak in my career. Duh, I haven't shut up in the last 30 minutes, right? But it's in Taurus. So I speak in a very practical way, hence why I'm really good at teaching. I could sit here and tell it to you in a million different ways, but as a true Taurus Mercury, I'm going to get my point across. Doesn't matter how long it takes, right? So everybody, depending on where your natal Mercury is, and here for you is in the sixth house, your communication style, where your voice shines, where you really have a lot of understanding and intellect, is in your day to day life. It's in your routine, it's in how you show up. And literally, sixth house is the house of like, what do you do every day? What is your routine? How is your health? How is your work? And not the work that you're known for, but like what you do every day. So, hypothetically speaking, with this example of a Scorpio Mercury in the sixth house, maybe you use your voice in your day to day career and they need your perspective because you look at things in a way that's deeper than most people look. Or maybe when it comes to your routine, you've learned things and gone deeper than most people have. So you have an understanding of like different ways of eating or different ways of communicating, better ways to do something. So again, if I'm looking at this in a chart, my brain would go to like, what do you do for work? What does your routine look like? What are the things that you think about? Like, what are you passionate about? These are natural things you're going to be like curious, observant. You're going to think about. You're going to live in this area and be like, this really, it just gets me going, right? So for me, it just happens to be my 10th house, but again, it aspects a lot of different things. So communication is a big part of my career. For you, your communication and your thought is a big part of your day to day, your routine, and your health. So I would look into that as like something that you do for a career, changing your habits around, or also teaching people about what you've learned in this area of your life, right? But again, I know we have people with different Mercuries in different places. So I made slides so we can go into like what they would look like. Again, I'm not going that deep. These are going to be more like subjective because we do have 9 planets in 2 hours. I want to make sure we get through it all. So, fire signs, if you have your Mercury in a fire sign, your communication style is very passionate, is very bold, is very like inspiring. People are like lit up when they hear you talk because they're like, wow, she's so excited when she's talking. But they also communicate directly. There is just joy, excitement, and I'm like, bam, 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 popping at the mouth, right? But that's also how they think. They think very quickly. They're so excited about something, they're like going for it, but like when the fire burns out, they're not that excited by it anymore, right? If it's in an earth sign, like mine would be, they're a little bit more practical. They focus a little bit more on details. They focus a little bit more on like doing it right, doing it slow, getting the point across. So again, even though in my chart, I'm a Gemini sun, blah, 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 and a Leo rising, we're like, look at me, blah, blah, blah. My Mercury is in Taurus. So when I communicate, there's impact, there's depth, there's groundedness. Taurus is very deliberate. Like I know what I'm saying, right? I communicate in a way that people trust me because Taurus is very trustworthy. Not only that, they rule the five senses. So you're talking sight, smells, taste. So they make you feel something. Now, Scorpio does it in a different way, but that's a water sign. So water signs communicate through intuition. They communicate through emotion. They communicate through like making you feel something, but in a different way, right? So Scorpio does it in a way where like they will poke. Remember, they're the what's the animal? The scorpion, I think. They have like the little thing at the end, the little why are
Yeah,
words hard? Thank
you
you.
got it.
Words are hard all of a sudden. Yeah, that thing. I can't think of the name. What is it called? The stinger.
Oh,
Girl. Okay, the stinger. They have that stinger. So their natural communication style feels like they're probing. Like when they get their prey, they don't stop until it's dead. So these are people who are very surgical, kind of like a scalpel. They're like, let's go deep. Let's open it up. And they're like, okay, this is a lot. But they're doing it with a purpose. They're strategic. They're going deep. They have this intensity about them. So their way of thinking and communicating is very, very deep, is very, very different, right? So it's felt. Now, through Cancer, is felt in emotions. It's more from the heart. Like I communicate in a way that reminds you of your mom, or a way that makes you feel like, man, they really get me, they understand me. Pisces paints a picture. It's all imagination and subtlety and like, oh, imagine this feeling, and people see themselves there, right? So anybody with a Pisces Mercury, they would be really gifted at like poetry, writing books, that type of thing. Air signs communicate more intellectually. So again, it's understanding and communication. So this is where they live. Anybody that has a Mercury in an earth sign, they are so good at talking. But again, good at talking could also look like lying or manipulating, or like, I know how to tell a story. I know how to spin things. The good things is if you write fiction or poetry, or you're a storyteller or a speaker, that is amazing. It'll open so many doors for you. But you also have to be mindful, like you are prone to lying. So pull it back, check yourself. Don't share information that is not accurate. Gemini specifically, because they move so fast, they're like, yep, 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 yep. Then you have Libra, who is more about getting along and balance. But again, they're really good at saying it in a way that people like it, where it feels good. So air Mercury's very successful through their voice, but also have to have a little bit of someone checking them or checking themselves, right? Aquarius is going to be the one that's going to blow your mind. They're going to be like saying something that you've never heard of before, like AI is going to take over the world. And you're like, okay, whatever. And then in 5 years, you're like, holy crap, you knew this back in 2015. What the heck? That is how their mind is kind of working. Are we following? Do we have any questions? Can I get a thumbs
yeah,
up? Okay,
I'm
good,
good.
good. So the next part is Venus. Venus is the planet of love. It's the planet of money, is the planet of attraction, is the planet of luxury. So Venus, the best way that I can describe Venus as a person is a really beautiful woman, like a siren. She's charming, she's beautiful, she's ethereal, she gets along with everybody. Everybody wants her. So attraction is a big thing. But also, she's really good with money. She doesn't struggle to make it because money just loves her. Money just comes to her. She eats the finest dinner. She goes to the nicest places. So Venus rules Taurus and Libra. But again, very different expressions of Venus, just like Mercury with Gemini and Virgo, right? So Venus rules all these beautiful things, but Taurus rules physical things like money, like your self-worth, like your self-value. These are very tangible things that like make you feel whole. Libra rules relationships, and it rules love, and it rules partnership and marriage and getting along and contracts. So even though they're both Venus and they're both about attraction, attracting money and attracting love, they both are necessary. But how do we do that? How do they show up differently? And I also want you to know that if I'm saying your sign, your rising is ruled by a planet, this is the planet that rules your chart. So if you're like a Libra rising, right, you are ruled by Venus. If you're a Taurus rising, you are ruled by Venus. So where your Venus is very, very important to your identity. Example, I am a Leo rising, right? So the most important planet on my chart is the sun because the sun rules Leo. My sun is in Gemini, right? Which is hi, me, but it's also in the 10th house and it aspects my MC and it aspects my Mercury. So the story goes like Jordy is a really big Leo rising personality. But the way that she shines, the way that she comes alive is through speaking. She talks about something that she is known for in her career because my MC is there, right? Why does she talk? Because is Gemini and then her Mercury is right there. But the way that she talks is very slow, deliberate, to the point, and practical. Also, she's going to be very successful if she uses her voice in her career one day. That is how you paint the picture of you. So if you are, for example, a Taurus rising, where is Venus in your chart? If your Venus is in the hypothetical third house is ruled by Gemini, the way that you attract money, the way that you bring in your self value and your self worth, which are Taurus things, the way that you step into the highest expression of that rising is where is your Venus? If it's in the third house, is through your neighbors, your siblings, your communication, short trips, right? If it's in the seventh house, through who you're dating, who you're with, right? So you have to kind of be able to piece together the story of like, this is how this shows up for me, right? So house, signs, planets. Do you see why we have to learn all the little pieces to put it together?
Mm, yeah.
Beautiful. So Venus, relationships, beauty, pleasure, values. Taurus and Libra, two different expressions of the same thing, but Venus tells you how do you love. So Scorpio, Venus, you love deeply. You love intensely. You love in a way that's almost intoxicating. What are you attracted to? People with depth, people who are intense, people who make you feel something, right? What do you value? Depth, connection, intentionality, loyalty, right? But hypothetically, let's say your Venus was in a very complete different sign, like what's a fun one? Like Venus in Aries. It's not fun, but it's mine, and I think it's fun. Venus in Aries is like she's a baddie. She's hot. She moves when she wants to. She'll tell a guy you're hot, not feel anything about it. Venus in Gemini will be so stimulated through conversation. They'll be like, "Oh my God, tell me more. What about this?" Venus in Sagittarius through travel, she would love foreigners. She'd be like, "Oh, I love your accent." Like she wants to plug herself into whatever is going on there. So whatever expression or flavor of Venus you have, this is how you love. These are the people you date. These are the things you value. This is how you make money also. Now again, oops, what just happened to my slides?
I still see it.
It didn't move. Did it change?
No.
Now it did. Okay. Okay, so Venus in the signs. Let me take a sip of my coffee. There are so many slides. I hope I can get through all of them. Venus in the signs. So if it is in a fire sign, we discussed the example of Aries. They are passionate, they're driven, they're hot, it's fire. So love is hot, love is erotic, love is playful, love is intense. Money too, like the more fun I'm having, like we enjoy being looked at, optimism, freedom. Like you want people who like expand you, who light you up, who get you excited. If you're an earth sign Venus, you value stability, a provider, someone who is central, someone who's like yours, that you don't have to share, somebody who values status, somebody who wants a wife, a home, to build something with you. So if you have Venus in this area, you're going to want, and an earth sign, you're going to want a husband, you want a home, you want stability. If you have it in a water sign, you're talking about deep emotional connection. You're talking about intimacy, feeling something, because the way that you fall in love is through emotion, right? Actually, I'm talking to someone who's a Venus and Scorpio. Oh my God, they are so intense and so deep emotionally that I'm like, I'm just over here fire having fun, but like it's not fun, it's deep for them, right? Air signs, they are more playful because it's all about stimulation, right? Intellectual and conversational. So for them, they fall in love with someone's mind. They fall in love with storytelling. They fall in love with like friendship and like playfulness and like jokes and like, oh my God, you make me feel so happy and giddy. Very different flavors of the same thing. Again, the slides are going to be shared so you can go deeper. But notice if this is the planet that rules me, this is a big part of my identity. Where is it? Depending on where it is, that's going to tell the story. Next week, we're going to put it together with the aspects. But I want you to start thinking in like a puzzle, right? So this is how I love. This is how I communicate. This is who I am. Now we're going into Mars. Mars is how you move, how you take action. What are the things that get you going? Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. Again, Scorpio has two rulers, but Aries is fully ruled by Mars. So I want to tell you the different flavors of Mars so you can see how these play out. So Aries is obviously the baby, bold, intense, fire, cardinal, let's go, let's get it done. So that drive and that action and that passion, that is their identity. They are going to move. If they feel something, they're going to go for it, right? Scorpio, the side of Mars has to do with like the intensity and like the anger, the possessiveness, the rage, the transformation part of Scorpio, because it comes in and it gets really, really intense. Mars drives intensity, but Scorpio is also ruled by another planet, which we're going to go into, and then I'll put that together for you. So Mars in your chart tells us, how do you take action? How do you pursue something you want? How do you handle conflict? How is your anger? How is your energy? How motivated are you? If Mars was a person, they would constantly be moving. They would constantly have a goal. They would climb Mount Everest and then the next day wake up and be like, I want to run a 20-mile marathon because I can. Like they just have so much energy and drive and motivation. These are people who are like, they light you up. So if Mars was a person, intense, right? Hence the anger picture here. But Mars in a fire sign, we've seen it in Aries. It's intense, it's hot, it's loud, it's noticed. So anytime Mars is in a fire sign, you move on purpose. You are so direct. You are so impulsive. You are so assertive. You're like, I'm gonna do this thing, and you will. So if you have Aries Mars, it's giving moving quickly and impulsively. Leo Mars, dramatically, wanting to be seen when I move, very confident. There's an air of like, I'm doing it and I want you to watch, right? Sagittarius, they're constantly trying to do something, a trip, new experience, being optimistic. Oh my God, what's the next thing? These people do not struggle with motivation. These people do not struggle to get things done. These people have a drive and an ability to get shit done that if you have a Mars in fire, you are going to be really successful. You're going to accomplish a lot. Again, in what area of your life? Where is your Mars, right? But if you are a Scorpio rising or an Aries rising, it's a very big part of your identity, okay? If you have an Earth Mars, we're talking a little bit more grounded, right? More slow moving, more long term, so persistent, resilient, steady, grounded. We're talking, you don't get mad easily, but when you do, you could murder somebody because it took time to get you there. You're going to take your time getting payback, right? It could look like overthinking it so much. Like, I'm not mad, but when I understand it, I'm like, ugh, right? But it's not just anger, it's also drive. So you do things, yes, but you do it slowly. You do them on purpose. You do them intentionally. You do them like disciplined with a plan. You know where you're going and you're going to get there, right? But again, this is your drive, your motivation, your persistence. So the downside is sometimes you move too slow. Yes, you can get it done, but sometimes you wait so long to move, you never get there. You never accomplish it. It's important if you are an Earth Mars that you commit to things a little bit quicker. You need a little fire. Fire could benefit from a little earth and slow down because they just do all the things, right? Now, when we're talking in air and water, sorry, I laughed at the image because I picked this one on purpose, but Mars in an air sign is going to be more mental and communicative. They're going to talk about what they're going to do. I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work out and I'm going to do this. And you're like, okay, but do it. Like, go do it, right? Or they're going to be so mental about it of like, I'm thinking of starting on Monday, or I think that I could start next Tuesday, or I think that I could do this. And then there's a certain point that's like, babe, go do it. Stop talking about it, be about it. So an air sign, Mars, benefits from somebody who gets them to do the thing, right? They are capable of doing it, but they're so focused on what it looks like, people getting it, communicating it. So anybody with an air sign Mars, my love, your action taking needs a little bit of support, and that's okay. You're also not meant to finish everything you start because you're going to want to move on to the next thing. And I think the joy of doing excuse me, for you is knowing that you did it, not so much doing it. Now, if you have Mars in a water sign, which I do, I'm a Pisces Mars, it's a little bit like goopy is the word that's coming up because water and action, how are you moving depends on how you feel. How are you moving depends on how the water is. How are you moving? You're moving based on instinct and intuition. You're not moving based on logic. You're not moving based on groundedness. You're moving based on like, how does this feel? So a Cancer Mars, I would say is probably the tougher one because it's the baby. So they don't really want to do much. I don't want to say they're lazy, but they really struggle to get things done. They really struggle to wade through the feelings and not get so, man, I don't want to. Like they have to move. So Cancer Mars, it's okay to ask for help. Okay. Scorpio Mars, they also move in a goopy way, but again, they're ruled by Mars. Mars is comfortable in these waters. Mars is very comfortable with like I'm going to achieve power. I'm going to get it done. But they become like obsessed. Like they're so intense and so determined and so, I want to own it. I want to control it. This is mine. Like that intensity that sometimes they go all in on something that they shouldn't have, but it felt good. Right. Or again, it's just about balance. I think for a Scorpio, it's not that you can't move, it's that maybe everything doesn't require you to move so intensely. Right. Pisces is more, again, I'm a Pisces Mars. So I'm speaking as someone who understands this. It fucking sucks. Okay. We take action. I'm really good at taking action, but if it doesn't feel right, I don't want to do it. I only have energy for the things that light me up. Right. Escapism is a big thing in Pisces. Sometimes if I can avoid it, I don't want to do it. Procrastination is the name of the game. For anybody really with a water Mars, but especially the Pisces one, procrastination is the name of the game. So you benefit from having a lot of earth in your chart, from having your Mars in a place that is successful. Like I have mine in the eighth house, which is the Scorpio house. So it gives me a little boost because Mars is home. Even though it's in Pisces, it's in its house of Scorpio, right? So again, look at your chart. Where is it? What does this say about me, right? Jupiter. This is about growth. This is about expansion. Anywhere that Jupiter is in your chart, Jupiter brings blessings. It's one of the great benefics. Benefics meaning he's one of the good guys, right? He literally comes in with presents every time he visits, but it forces you to grow so you can get the blessing. So Jupiter rules Sagittarius and it co-rules Pisces. Pisces has two rulers. We're going to get into that. But Sagittarius is the big thinker, higher perspective, higher mind. Let's go take that trip. Let's go save a life. Let's go change the world. Very optimistic. Hello, they're ruled by the planet of luck. They don't really struggle. Things just happen. They're confident. People like them. Doors open. They're so lucky. They start to kind of rely on that and not really go that deep, right? They stay on the up here. Pisces gets lost in the depth of its waters because it's not just water, it's expanded water. Its growth is deep, is intense. So like it can overwhelm a Pisces. So escapism is a big thing. For Sagittarius, they just avoid it and move on to the next thing. For a Pisces, they just, drugs, mental health, check out. I just don't want to do it. So growth and expansion is beautiful, but it needs to be contained, right? So Jupiter as a planet represents abundance, opportunities, beliefs. So, where is your Jupiter tells me this is a big area of your life where you are constantly having to grow. This is an area of your life where you are constantly changing your beliefs around it. This is an area of your life where you find development. You go through so many spurts of growing that you keep changing how you see it, how you show up, what you believe. If Jupiter was a person, it would be a Sagittarius. They would just be optimistic, super wise, because they're constantly learning so much and looking at new experiences. And like they would travel a lot. They would have a lot of hobbies. They would get along with so many people. Everybody would love them. They'd be like, oh my God, I remember that time that Jupiter gave me a gift. That's who they are. They go through life blessing people, but they don't settle down. They're like restless. So good and bad. Now, Jupiter in the signs, remember, this is where you grow, but it's also how do you grow? So if you have Jupiter in a fire sign, you grow through taking action. You grow through being excited. You grow through moving on purpose, through being active, through like, oh my God, I'm out here and I'm doing the thing, like getting on stage and speaking to a crowd or like doing that workout thing. Like it makes you confident, it makes you optimistic, it makes you creative. You're constantly learning and traveling and growing, right? Earth signs, they grow through practicality. They grow through the process. They grow through stability. They grow through achieving. So they value security. They appreciate beauty. They are very focused on the details and refinement. They grow through being disciplined. So let's say you have Jupiter in the second house in Capricorn, right? You grow about around your money and your self-worth and your self-value, but you take your time with it. You have a plan for it. You change every year, you tweak something in your plan. Maybe you tweak your budget, maybe you tweak your expenses, maybe you tweak how you do it. And through that, it grows your self-worth and being like, man, I'm never going to be broke again. I really, wow, I'm so good with money. And wow, I'm teaching people about money now. So you're constantly growing, but it's an area of your life that's constantly testing you too, right? If you have it in an air sign, you grow through ideas and communication. So you don't even have to do the thing. You just need to talk about it and like understand it more and be like, wow, this is so cool. Like, I wonder if, and what about this? So they love to learn. They communicate a lot and they communicate in a way that is so big and larger than life. And people really connect because, again, Jupiter amplifies, Jupiter is growth. Depending on which sign shows a little bit different, but essentially intellect and communication, air, right? Water, Jupiter, they grow through intuition, spiritual exploration, emotional exploration. And I can speak on it because my Jupiter is in Cancer in the 12th house, water house, with the moon conjunct, meaning the moon and Jupiter are together. I call him my Jupiter because you can't have one without the other. So my emotions are very amplified by Jupiter. And it's in the 12th house, which is the Pisces house. So technically, they should drown me. It's a lot of emotion, right? I have other things that balance me out, but it's a very deep feeling because you don't just feel, you also have Jupiter. So the way you grow is through inner work, through healing, through crying, through processing your feelings out loud, through finding spirituality or what you believe or philosophy, right? So when we're talking water Jupiter, now let me take a sip of my coffee, you guys. Oh my God, what is going on in your sixth house?
A lot.
How many
Like,
planets do you have there?
um, 4 in North Node.
Okay,
4.
yeah, no, we got to talk about your chart, babe. You get a mini reading just for that. That's insane. Holy crap. Because every other house, you're like, sixth house, Scorpio.
Oh,
Oh my
Venus,
God.
Mercury, Jupiter, Pluto. Well, Pluto's in the seventh.
Okay, and these are really big planets, as you can tell.
Yeah.
These are really big planets. They're not baby ones. So water sign Jupiters, again, we grow through emotion and spirituality. Different levels, different ways, right? But through feeling. Then we have, why does it do that? Oh, it's because I clicked on the chat probably. Okay. Saturn. I like to call Saturn daddy because that's the energy he gives. So Saturn is the planet of responsibility. It's honestly a planet that also brings karma. It's a planet that's about structure, long-term growth, and it rules Capricorn, but it also co-rules Aquarius. So Aquarius also has two rulers. We'll get into that. But essentially, where you have Saturn in your chart, we talk about our Saturn return all the time and like how big this moment is big, excuse me, because Saturn is the place where you are tested. This is the place where like the lessons you learn matter. Where being disciplined matters. Where finding structure matters. So I have my natal Saturn in my sixth house. So having a routine really, really benefits me, right? It also opposes my 12th house, which is that moon Jupiter situation. So I need that to get me out of my feelings, right? It's in Capricorn, it grounds me. It also shows you like where do you need to develop, where do you need to mature. So you might think is working, but you want to continuously grow and improve in this area. It also shows you where you need to be more disciplined. where you need to exercise self-control, right? So your Saturn return, the reason it hits so hard is because we're living one way and we're like, everything is fine. And then Saturn comes home and it's like, this is not working. Let's do it right. So these are lessons. You're going to have tests. You're going to have to find discipline. You're going to have to grow here. But it's not grow like Jupiter, where it feels really beautiful and expansive. Is growing like you don't have a choice. So you either grow through love or you grow through pain, right? So if Saturn was a person, this is your mentor. This is somebody who's pushing you. They're making you grow up and you hate them. That's your coach. You're like, ugh, but they force you to grow up. So the reason I put Christian Grey on this slide is because it's giving daddy, right? It's that energy. So Saturn in the signs, if it's a fire sign Saturn, which right now Saturn is in Aries. So for my people who are going into their Saturn return right now, holy crap. Aries Saturn, you're here to learn patience. Remember, Aries is really impulsive. They're constantly like, let me jump at the thing. Saturn is like, no, baby, slow down, temper that shit. We cannot get this fire burning, burn it all to the ground. So even though it hurts, it teaches them self-control. It teaches them to slow down, right? If you have it in Leo, it humbles you. Leo's like, I'm the center of the universe. And Saturn is like, no, baby, you're just one person. You are not that special. So it forces you to humble yourself, to really develop authority because you are a leader. You are amazing. People love you, but you can't be so into yourself that you miss the people part, right? Sagittarius, it teaches you responsibility. It teaches you that what you believe and what you share and your vision, it matters. You can't just go willy-nilly doing all the things. You have to like ground it. Like, how do you become a teacher and a mentor if you don't ground it, right? If it's in an earth sign, these lessons are about structure. They're about responsibility. They're about hard work. So if you have Saturn in Taurus, it teaches you consistent effort and patience and how to build your wealth. Taurus rules money. So you're going to be rich, but Saturn is going to make you do the work. You don't just get to work and be like, I'm rich, right? If you have Saturn in Virgo, it teaches you how to focus on the details, how to be really meticulous, how to take your time and do it right, right? It also teaches you through health. So if you have Saturn in Virgo, you might have a lot of health issues because it forces you to take care of your body, to have a routine, to have structure, right? If you have it in Capricorn, which I believe I do, you have to master discipline. And you're ambitious and driven, but like you are going to do it. How am I saying? It's going to force you to slow down and do it right. Like you can't just get to success and wealth because you have Capricorn here and it's like, oh my God, they're always successful. It's like, no, it's going to teach you discipline. It's like you want it, work for it. But you do get at the end career and reputation, which is a win. Now, if you have it in an air sign, the lessons come about thinking. So, how you process information, communication, and putting structures that align with your thoughts. But it can't be me thought. It has to be what is better for everybody. Because remember, air is also Libra. It's about finding that balance. So if you have it in Gemini, the lesson is communicating in a disciplined way, focusing on something instead of being so scatterbrained, and like getting everything that you've learned and building structure around it. If you have it in Libra, it's about being responsible in relationships. You're supposed to be fair and find balance with people, right? If you have it in Aquarius, we're talking about, yes, you have this beautiful, brilliant mind, but like, how do you put structure around it? Like, you can't just tell me aliens are coming and AI is a thing and like not put it in a freaking box where like it doesn't give people psychosis when they hear that, right? So you have a social responsibility. It forces you to build a system around it. Now, if it's in a water sign, the lessons are going to come around emotional boundaries and resilience because emotions flow and they're so great. But Saturn is like, no, unbound emotion, it overflows. So let's get that in check. So we start to say no. We become more mature. We say, no, mom, I'm not okay with this. So if it's in Cancer, you learn to mature because remember, you're the baby. So emotional maturity and not making it about you and not wow, wow, whoa, me forces you to grow up. But it also rules the home. So it builds structure around your home. So maybe when Saturn comes back, you end up homeless. And you're like, wow, I never want to be here again. And that forces you to like build a lifestyle that gives you a home. For Scorpio, it teaches you how to control your power because Scorpio can be so intense. They might hurt someone because they want to get what they want, right? So it teaches you control. And it teaches you that emotional experiences that are deep are not bad, but it puts containment around it so you don't get lost in that darkness. If you have it in Pisces, Pisces is very dreamy and disconnected. They rule escapism. So Saturn comes in and it's like, no, no, you're not going this deep. And it gives you a reality check of like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So for a lot of water Saturns, this is going to sound bad, but I have to share it. Anybody that has a water Saturn, they might have a psychotic break or like a mental break or like a, oh my God, this is not working. But it's like your emotions have to overflow so that you can be like, oh no, I need to contain it. This is not working, right? So Pisces specifically, setting boundaries, not going too deep into spiritual things you don't understand. Even with your creativity, building routine around it, you might be a really successful artist, but if you don't build a routine around it, you're never going to get there, right? So Saturn is daddy, but it's like, it's tough, right? It's tough love, but we need it. Oh my gosh, I'm going to kick me out again. And bam. Now, Uranus. This planet is funky. This is the planet of the unexpected. And I also want to highlight something because Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto all move signs in the last 6 months, or at least they will, because I know Uranus is moving April 25th, and that's the last one. These are planets that don't move that frequently. We're going to get into that. But these are big things that are happening. That's why the astrology is so chaotic. But Uranus rules Aquarius. We talked about Aquarius being like ahead of their time, a little weird, a little different. Uranus is the planet of change and awakening. This is a planet that's all about rebellion, being different, innovating, changing things on a whim, spur of the moment type of things. So wherever Uranus is in your chart, especially if you're in Aquarius rising and you're ruled by Uranus, this is where you break free. This is where things just happen. One day, everything is one way. And then the next day, I don't know, you win the lottery and you're like, what just happened? And your life is completely different, right? So, wherever Uranus is in your chart, there's going to be some random, unexpected situations that'll come. But these are the places where you also are unique. You are doing it differently. So, if Uranus was a person, they're weird, they're an inventor, they break the norm, they don't fit in, right? So wherever this is in your chart, this is the part of you that's weird. This is the part where you don't fit in. That's why if you're in Aquarius rising, part of your description is weird because it's your identity. You're just different. No one's like you. If it's in your career, you do career in a way that most people don't really think about. Or maybe if it's in your household, you live different. Maybe you live in a van and you travel the world, but that works for you, right? So hence the image of the weird. But Uranus in a fire sign, these are people, again, this is where you love change and you embrace disruption. So you're embracing innovation. You're embracing like you're excited about being different and creating change and doing something in a way that's like so bold and loud and passionate, right? So pioneering, bringing something new is very dramatic. Is you want to be seen. You want to share it in a way that's like loud. Loud and fire kind of go together. If you have it in an earth sign, it's a little bit more grounded, it's a little bit more quiet, but you innovate practically. You innovate in a way that's like it's improving the collective. Like for a long time, Uranus was in Capricorn. That's where my natally is. And while that was happening, like the internet became structured and it was a thing, right? And like banks took over a lot of stuff and like they brought order to a lot of things, but they had to do it differently because the internet was something that people were like, I've never heard of this thing. It's not going to work. And now we can imagine our lives without it, right? And then when we go into in the air signs, it gets a little bit more heavy here because it's intellect. Remember, air signs is communication and thought. And when you add the unexpected into communication and thought, that is where you get AI. That is where you get, again, the internet. That is where you get things that are like intellectually different and curious and advances technology. And like we communicate in a different way, right? Because before we could only talk through seeing somebody or through letters. Now we do it via text. Now we do voice notes. Now we can send videos. That is the kind of innovation that air signs bring, right? Water signs is more emotional and psychically because again they rule intuition and feelings, so the changes they bring are spiritual. So when Uranus is in a sign that is watery, it brings intuition, downloads, dreams, breakthroughs, a lot of psychic stuff that people are like, we never believed this could happen. So depending on where you have Uranus, This is the part of you that's different, that's unique. But the way that you do it depends on what element and what sign. Neptune. This is a planet that co-rules Pisces. Oh, and I forgot to say, Aquarius is co-ruled by Uranus and Saturn. I know we touched on it, but the side that Uranus brings into it is the weird. The side that Saturn brings into it is the structure. Because Aquarius is here to build long term. They do it differently, but they need Saturn to kind of ground them, right? So now Neptune, this one rules Pisces. Again, we talked about Pisces being co-ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter expands and makes it really big. Now, Neptune is a planet that rules like dreams and intuition and spirituality, but it also rules illusions. Anywhere Neptune is in your chart, you are very creative. Anywhere that Neptune is in your chart, you are very dreamy, you're very intuitive, but also you have illusions around it. So if you have Neptune in your fourth house, for example, you might have an idea of like, oh no, this is what my family was like, but maybe there was a lot of trauma and you just don't see it. Or you might have Neptune in a house that has to do with money, like the second or the eighth. And you might be like, I don't understand why I struggle with money, but like you have illusions around it. Maybe you're spending too much, but you can't fully see it. So wherever you have Neptune, there's like a little bit of rose-colored glasses that you need to always check and make sure that like you're seeing what it is, not what you want to see. Now, it rules dreams, creativity. Things can be a little hazy, but like if Neptune was a person, this is like an artist. This is somebody who's like a healer, a mystic. They're different, but like in a very ethereal, intuitive type of creative way. It's giving hippie, right? So Neptune in a fire sign is idealistic because remember, they're all excited and drive, but like if you're not seeing it clearly, you're jumping into things and you don't really fully understand what you're jumping into. They might be really into like love or very dramatic or like painting or whatever the thing is that they're exploring. These are places where you want to check yourself, right? If it's in an earth sign, it's going to be a little bit more practical. It's still very Neptune-y, like there's still going to be some, manifestation or creativity or idealism, but it's going to be more grounded. These are people who, like, if they chose to develop their creativity, they would be really successful artists. If they chose to develop their spirituality, they would build a grounded practice. These are people who would like start a cult or something, right? If it's in a fire sign, it's all talk and excitement. If it's in an earth sign, it's a little bit more grounded, right? When you get into air, it's a little bit more philosophical. Again, they rule the mind and communication. So it's a lot of like storytelling and speaking and also thinking and thought. So if I were to guess somebody who like channeled human design, which is one of the tools that I use, they would have had Neptune in an air sign because it's something that was done so differently, but so cool because it weaved together five different modalities into one thing. That's something that someone with Neptune in an air sign would do. Also, they would be really gifted at like writing books, especially fiction books, or telling a story about something that we've never seen before, right? When it's in a water sign, we're talking more emotion, we're talking more intuition. These are the people who have a little bit more of an edge. Obviously, I hesitate to say they're psychic, but that's kind of what it looks like because you have emotion connected with like that dreamy quality of Neptune. And there's just deep everything, dreams, intuition, subconscious exploration, feeling connected to it all. So anybody that has Neptune in a water sign, these people are not your average logic driven people. They're a little bit more intuitive than most people tend to be. Now, lastly, one of my favorites is Pluto. Pluto is the planet of transformation. It's also the planet of power and it rules Scorpio. So I know I joke and I say Scorpio, is the eighth house, sex, death, money, the taboo. Pluto is the place, and I put the tower card there on purpose. It's where you transform. These are the places where there's a deep inner change. There's like power dynamics. This is the darkest part of you. So, example being a Leo rising, my fourth house is in Scorpio. My childhood, y'all, so dark. My family life, so dark. It's also the most private part of me. I share my family, but I don't share the extent of it because the bond is so deep, right? But if you have Pluto like in your second house Money, you're really private about it. You keep it to yourself, but you also have a lot of lessons you've learned through money, or you might have an obsession with money. So again, this is the darkest part of you. Usually this is an area where I would recommend a little bit of shadow work, right? But it rules Scorpio. So it's Mars and Pluto that rule Scorpio. Mars brings that intensity. Pluto brings the transformation. That's why Scorpio is known to be a sign that is so transformative and so different and so unique, is because the intensity doesn't stop. It might look calm on the surface, but it's really dark on the bottom. Now, depending on where you have Pluto, this is a generational planet because Pluto moves every 20 something years, meaning it's usually a generation that gets Pluto in a sign. So I'm not going to go through all of them because most of these are not alive today. The Plutos that we have right now is Pluto in Scorpio, Pluto in Sagittarius, Pluto in Capricorn, and Pluto in Aquarius. Those are the ones being born right now. Maybe even the one before me. So Pluto in Libra or Virgo. That's about as far as it would go because then they would have to be 120 to fit into that category, right? So Pluto, not only is it generational, it's a planet that is very intense. So where in your chart is it? What sign is it on? What is transforming for you? Or what is the area that you're really private about, right? So if it's in a fire sign, the intensity that you have and the transformation you bring is around the things that you do. It's around the things that you're passionate about. It's like you cannot help but to go really, really deep and bring change and do something different, right? If it's in an earth sign, is obsessive need to build, to do, to provide, very determined, very resilient, very intense. If it's in an air sign, it's intellectual. So right now, Pluto's in Aquarius. What we're expecting or what's happening is there's a lot of intellectual intensity, a lot of intense communication, a lot of truths coming out around things that were not said. Excuse me, and also things like technology and AI, because again, we're going deeper than we've ever been in a sign that's already so intense, but we'll unpack that in a bit. If it's in a water sign, we're talking emotional intensity and deep healing. So again, Scorpio fourth house and Pluto being there for me, very intense emotional childhood, very profound family wounds. And this isn't like a woe me, it's just depending on where this is on your chart, I want you to notice there is a charge, there's an emotional charge here for you. Um, but yeah, also water Pluto brings a deep psychological digging because, again, this is also the house of trauma, Scorpio. So now let's unpack. We got the planets, we know what they represent, we see where they show up, but how often do they move? Because we always hear, like, oh, the sun entered Aries, or Mercury is retrograding in Pisces, or Venus is in Aries. This is how frequently they actually move. So some planets move very soon, and others move 7 years, 20 years, 10 years. So there are some transits meaning the planets are moving in a certain way that we see frequently, like the sun moves every month. Every month it changes sign. That's why we go from Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer, because it's literally moving around in the sky to a different constellation until it goes all the way around. So the sun takes 1 year to do one full cycle. That is why every year we come back to the same and we're like, we're back to Aries season, right? So essentially it moves every 28 to 30 days, sometimes 31. The moon is the fastest moving planet because it moves every 2.5 days. So, depending on when a child is born, this is one that we want to get the time right because it'll tell us where is their moon. Because if they were born in the morning versus the afternoon, their moon sign could have been different, right? Mercury moves every 88 days to make it all the way around. So every 2 to 3 weeks is changing signs until it retrogrades. Because when it retrograded in Pisces, it was retrograded for 2 weeks. And now it's moving its way back. So it's going to be in Pisces for a total of like 5 to 6 weeks. But the whole cycle takes 88 days until it retrogrades. Venus takes 225 days to make it all the way around. So every 3 to 4 weeks, Venus moves signs. So right now, Venus is in Aries. I'm on my Venus return, but it's going to be moving into Taurus here pretty soon, and it's going to be home, and it's going to be amazing. Mars takes 2 years to make it all the way around. So every 6 to 7 weeks, Mars moves. Right now, it's still in Pisces. It's about to enter Aries here in the next week. And again, once we start talking about aspects next week, we'll be able to go deeper into what does this feel like when it happens. But I just want to get the cycles in your mind. Jupiter is a really, these are the planets that are more like bigger impact and also generational. So Jupiter is a big one because it moves once a year. It takes a full 12 years to make it all the way across. So we've had Jupiter in Cancer roughly for about, I don't know, 9, 10 months now. And this summer in June is going to be moving into Leo. Jupiter also retrogrades for a little bit. So it does take about like a full year, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. But when it moves into a sign, remember, Jupiter is about growth, expansion, and it leaves gifts. So right now, it's working the side of your chart where you have Cancer. So there's a lot of growth happening in that area for you, right? For me, is the 12th house. Has not been fun, but I'm just saying it brings a lot of opportunities, growth, and change. And when it leaves, it usually brings a blessing. So let's say it was in your career house. Maybe at the end of that year, you get your dream job. If it was around your health, maybe at the end of that year, you're like, wow, I've never been in better health, or wow, I lost 50 pounds, right? So it's helping you grow that area. And when you use that energy to work with it, it makes your life flow a little bit better. And then at the end, there's usually a big blessing. So around this summer, whatever area this is in for you, you should notice that. Saturn, we talk about our Saturn return. This planet takes 29 years to make it all the way around. So it takes anywhere between 28 and a half to 32 is what we tell people for us to notice Saturn came back and it brought the lessons that it needed to bring. Jupiter brings lessons through love. Saturn brings lessons through pain because they're tough, right? But every 2.5 to 3 years, it moves. Saturn just entered Aries 2 weeks ago. So this season of 2.5 years to 3 years we're about to have in Aries is a very different flavor than Saturn was in Pisces. Because we discussed it earlier, the lessons are different. In Pisces, they were emotional. In Aries, they're about action. So we expect a lot of like people being reactive and childish. Again, Aries is the baby, right? So popping off at the mouth, a war here or there, that type of stuff. Uranus takes 84 years to make a cycle. So every 7 years or so, Uranus moves. So Uranus is actually moving from Taurus into Gemini on April 25th. And this is a big one because it brings disruption, unexpected change, or random. Remember, this is the weirdo that comes in and like everything is different, right? So when Uranus enters Gemini, it will be felt. Right now, for me, is in Taurus, which is my career house, is bringing a lot of unexpected random things in that area. When it enters my 11th house, I will update you on that. Neptune takes 165 years to move. So this is a generational planet. Generational because it takes 14 years for it to happen. So certain generations have the Uranus in the same thing. So like if you're a millennial, you probably have it either in Capricorn or Aquarius. That's where it would have been. So every 14 years it moves. But remember, Neptune brings a little edge of illusion. So it puts us into rose-colored glasses. Neptune just moved into Aries on last week, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. And this is a new cycle because as long as we have been alive, Neptune has not been in Aries. Because do you know anybody who is 165 years old today? I do not. So with that in mind, Neptune being in Aries, this is the first time in our lifetime we are experiencing this energy. The last time this happened, it was in the 1800s. Pluto moves every 248 years. So it takes anywhere from 12 to 30 years to be in a sign. Right now, Pluto in Aquarius is going to last, I want to say, 23 years. So again, generational. Every child that's being born from mid last year for the next 20 something years is going to have Pluto in Aquarius. But as a collective, we are experiencing Pluto in Aquarius. So where in your chart is Aquarius? This is what's bringing a lot of transformation, a lot of change, a lot of psychological healing. Remember, Pluto is a little intense, but we are collectively going through this. Now, where does it affect you the most? That depends on which house. I hope we can get through all the slides. It's a lot of information. How are we feeling? Can I get a thumbs up? Are we still listening? Are we alive?
I'm here. I'm following.
Good. So let's get into the cycles of the moon. Now, we obviously know we have eclipses, the full moon in Sagittarius, the new moon in this. What does it actually mean, right? The moon, as we said, moves every 28 days, roughly, sometimes a little bit longer. So every 2.5 days, the moon is changing signs. It moves really, really fast. So if you can picture the wheel in astrology, that's why I put this image here. When the moon is here and it's opposing the sun, meaning it's in the opposite side of it, that's what we call a new moon. No, I'm a liar. Full moon. Yes, a new moon. Sorry, new moon, because the sky would be at the darkest point because the moon and the sun are opposing each other. And when it's at the darkest point, you can barely see it in the sky. So there are cycles of the moons and things that you do when these cycles happen. So when there's a new moon, the idea is that it's new beginnings because we can't see anything, so we can create whatever we want. And usually when the sun and the moon are opposing each other, we can't really see that clearly. So we get to create what do we want. So new moons in astrology are really good to set intentions. They're really good for you to like journal and sit with and plan what do you want. We recently had one in Pisces last week. And my God, that day was magical. I literally had so many breakthroughs. I had like a clear picture of like, this is what I'm doing. Some people experience it like a lot of dreams or just a splurt of clarity. They wake up in the morning with a plan of what they want to do and what they want to change in what area of their lives. So we have a new moon in every sign every year. Usually the new moon happens wherever the sun is at that time. So actually, no, so I'm sorry. When the sun and the moon are together is the new moon, my brain, because we just had it in Pisces. Sun was in Pisces, moon was in Pisces. That's when we had it. When it opposes it, when it looks like this is when we have the full moon. That is when the cycle is like illuminating it all. So not just what we started, because we set intentions when it was here, but at this point is the completion. This is like the peak of the thing, because if it's working its way back around, this is when we can see the most of it. So full moons tend to be places where there's a lot of intensity emotionally. There's a lot of clarity. There's a lot of like things coming to an end or like things that needed to happen happening. So let's say Pisces for you was in the seventh house of relationships. You had a lot of clarity around like, man, I want to date this type of people. I'm not happy in my relationship. I think I want to move on. By the time the cycle comes around and you have the full moon, that usually happens around 6 months from the time. That's when you're like, oh my goodness, this is not the person I want to be with. And you end the relationship. And then when it comes back around in 6 months and it hits that 1 year mark, again, for the sun and the moon to find each other in the same sign again, is when you're like, wow, look at how much I grew through walking away from that relationship. So new moons are really good for beginning, planning, setting goals. Full moon is when you see the peak of what happened. And then when the new moon comes back around, then you get to set goals around that area of your life one more time. I can go deeper into this, but I'm going to keep it at the one slide just because there's other things I want to touch on. And I know we're pushing it on time. So there's another, what do you even call it? Another moon cycle that is worth mentioning because every year we have eclipses, right? The difference between the full moon or new moon and an eclipse is that the nodes, the north node and the south node, are usually involved when there is an eclipse. What that means, and we're going to talk about the nodes in a second, is that it's activating collective change because the nodes in astrology are known for being like points of fate. North node meaning where we are heading, south node meaning what we're releasing. And every 2.5 years, the nodes move signs. So depending on where they are, when a new moon and a full moon occur, aspecting the nodes, meaning they're in the same house as the nodes, that is when we have an eclipse. So with a new moon, we set intentions. With a full moon, we see them come alive. We see it happen. With an eclipse, we don't set intentions and we don't plan or do any kind of, I don't know if you're into like the woo-woo stuff, we don't do any kind of rituals around eclipse because an eclipse energetically is 100 times more potent than a full moon. So while an emotional break would be like, oh, I ended up with my boyfriend, an eclipse breakup would be like I ended up in a psych ward because he drove me crazy and I don't want anything to do with him. So it's a lot more intense. Eclipses are very unpredictable, sporadic, and very intense energy. So when there are eclipses, we usually obviously understand what's coming up, but these are days you want to take it easy. You want to kind of stay home. You don't want to pop off. Like if somebody cuts you off in traffic, let them go because energetically people are so activated, they don't know what to do with that energy, right? So eclipses are portals that kind of bring accelerated change. They also bring moments that are like once in a lifetime. So the example of like, oh my God, that breakup led me to a psych ward. You're not going to be in a psych ward your whole life, but maybe that one time the emotions were so much you couldn't handle it, right? So they bring a lot of change because after that you will never be the same. So there's like really powerful beginnings with the new moon eclipses and really powerful endings with the full moon eclipses, right? The node shift signs every 18 months or so, usually 2 years. So depending on where they are, that's where the eclipses will hit. But they bring a lot of change. I do want to go deeper into the nodes, but I want to highlight other points that are in your chart that if you have questions, we'll open it at the end, or you guys can send me emails about it and we can go deeper. Because if I made a slide for each of these, we would be here all day, and you only need to know a couple of them. We've talked about the ascendant. So that is your rising right here. Like, who are you? How do people see you? We've talked about the midheaven. The midheaven is where your career would be, right? This is what you're known for. This is what you do. Then we have your descendant, which is opposing your ascendant. And we have your IC, which is opposing your MC, which is your home, where you come from, your roots, right? Now we have the node, the south node and the north node. So the north node looks like this. It's the one right here. And the south node looks like that. It's like a little U. The north node is where your soul is meant to go. This is like where you're meant to grow. This is where destiny is leading you. This is like who you're meant to become. So for example, I have my north node in Aquarius at the seventh house. So Aquarius is very unique, very different, but it's in the seventh house of Libra, of relationships and partnerships. So I'm meant to relate to people in a very particular way. I'm also somebody that's probably going to end up in a relationship with a weirdo because Aquarius, seventh house. But it's kind of the idea of like that's where everything that I'm living and experiencing is leading me to step into that purpose, right? So, where is your north node? What sign? What house? Very, very important for you to know. Now, wherever your north node is, it opposes your south node. They are an axis, they go together. So if I move here, they move there, right? So the south node are the things that you're meant to release. These are patterns that are so ingrained in you that you have to let them go. It's like your comfort zone. If you believe in past lives, that's essentially what they're known for, but it's the notes of destiny. Like this is what your soul came to live, right? So we care about these points, even though they're calculated, because they tell me a lot about who you are becoming, right? Where are you going in life? Another aspect I want to talk about is Chiron. I've had a lot of questions around it from you guys, so I want to note it. It looks like this is the little K with a circle. Chiron in astrology is known as like the core wound. This is the part of you where you have a lot of pain, where you've had to heal a lot, but eventually you overcome that pain and you end up teaching other people. So my Chiron in Cancer, 12th house, a lot of emotional turmoil around my childhood, around my family. But now I'm a life coach. Now I help people work through that. And it doesn't mean I fully healed it, it's the wound that keeps coming back. But at every level that I heal, then I'm able to help people a little bit more, right? Lilith is the one that looks like this, little moon in the cross. Lilith in astrology, this is like your, what I would call dark feminine. It's like your shadow attributes, is where you have power that like is connected to the darker aspects of you. So for example, let's say I'm really good at manipulating people. I was raised by wolves, right? My Lilith, I have the ability to spin and speak and say things in a way that people love it. In a high expression, I'm really good at sales. In a negative expression, I could use people, right? So these are dark things but they don't have to be used dark. I'm just really good at sales. That's kind of how it works, right? Then we have vertex, which is, where is that sign? Oh, it's not in this chart. But the vertex is the VX on your chart. If you printed it, you should have it. If you don't, let me know and I'll pull your chart and send it over to you. But vertex is the point of fate. These are people you're meant to meet, big moments in your life, like when you meet the love of your life, the day that you get married. If you pull a transit chart, you'll be able to see your vertex in a really cool way of like how these things keep happening. Also, when the sun is transiting, let's say your vertex is in Scorpio, pay attention to what happens in your life during Scorpio season. If you have your vertex in Aries, pay attention to who comes into your life, what kind of things happen around this season, because again, it's bringing the right people. It's illuminating the area of your life, and vertex has a little point of fate. Now, wherever vertex is on the opposite side, just like the nodes, there's the anti-vertex. So these are more like, instead of people, is like what comes as a result of these people. So let's say that I have my vertex in my 10th house and I meet people through my career. What does that bring into my life? Blessings and abundance in my home because it opposes my fourth house. If it's like your first and your seventh, let's say your vertex is at the seventh and every person you date brings something that changes your identity. That's kind of how that works. Is like what you put in, what comes out on the other side, right? And then part of fortune is also not on the screen, but it's the circle that has a cross in the middle. And that is a place where you are naturally gifted. You're just naturally lucky. It comes easy to you. Maybe if it's in your third house, you're just really good at communicating. If it's in your 10th house, you're just really good at connecting with people. Whatever that is, part of fortune is a little bit of a gift, kind of. Now with the nodes, we discussed them a little bit. I added this slide, so when you guys come back and want to go deeper, you can have the breakdown of them. But essentially, collectively, the nodes move. So we collectively are working through things. So the eclipses right now that were happening, the last one was in, I want to say Pisces. Yes. But Pisces is where the south node is right now. These are the things we're meant to let go of. No, it's the north node, is where we're meant to step into. And then we have Virgo, where the south node is, which are the things we need to let go of. So we're meant to step into a more dreamy, intuitive version of ourselves in whatever area of your life the nodes are. And then we're meant to let go of like the hyper fixating and the details and the practicality of Virgo. Now, this summer, the nodes are going to be moving into Leo and Aquarius. And those are going to be huge, especially for people who are around my age, 36 to 38, because it'll be our nodal return. So my natal south node is in Leo. And when the south node moves into Leo, there's a lot of shedding that's getting ready to happen, right? But the north node in Aquarius, there's a lot of beautiful, magical things I'm about to step into as a result of shedding. So the eclipses for the next couple of years, notice where you have Aquarius and where you have Leo, because you're really going to have a lot of transformation coming into your life in the next 2 years. Now, depending on what transit is hitting what house, it kind of tells us what is coming in, what is it activating for you. The sun moves every month. So where is it? Let's say right now is in Aries and you're in Aries rising. For the next month, your appearance, your identity, who you are, that's in focus. If Aries is in your second house, your money, your self-worth, your self-value, that's in focus. If Aries is in your seventh house, your relationships, your partnerships, that's in focus. So notice where is Aries. This is what's happening for the next month. This is what we're focusing on. The moon moves really quickly every 2.5 days. So your feelings are going to fluctuate. Some days you're going to be more triggered. Some days you're going to be more calm. You're going to try them all on. And it's just every day you might feel like a different version of you, right? Mercury moves semi-frequently, but it's your communication, any trips, clarity, confusion. So when Mercury goes retrograde, it forces you to rethink, to slow down, to communicate differently. Communication gets messy, trips get messy, but it's because it's forcing us to slow down. But when it's direct, depending on where it is, if Mercury is in Sagittarius, it's a great time to teach and to speak. If Mercury is in Cancer, maybe take it slow, maybe don't talk so much. Because depending on what expression of Mercury is activated, it affects how you communicate and how you think. Like when Mercury is in Pisces, not a great time to think too deep because you might get lost in your thoughts, right? Venus, anytime it moves, it brings, relationships, finances, pleasure, conflict, harmony. Where is it? What is it aspecting? What is it bringing up, right? Mars is drive and action. Jupiter is expansion, luck, and opportunity. So Jupiter moves once a year. So right now is in Cancer. This is the part of your chart where you are having to grow, where you've been expanding. Opportunities may have popped in, but it's moving into Leo. So what's coming in? Where do you have to grow next? Like for me as a Leo rising, whatever I'm working on right now is preparing me for the spotlight to be in like my identity. So I'm probably going to look very different in a year. I'm probably going to be showing up differently, being perceived differently. But again, I'm also moving abroad. So a lot is going to change, right? Saturn, when Saturn, depending on which house it is going to bring lessons. It's going to bring a little bit of structure, a little bit of difficulty. Uranus is going to bring unexpected change, disruption. Is moving into Gemini on the 25th. Where is Gemini in your chart? What unexpected things can you expect? Is it people? Is it jobs? Is it losing a job? Is it having a breakthrough in something that you were afraid to let go of and life just took it away? So notice where Gemini is. That's where Uranus is going into. Neptune, where is it? It just moved into Aries. This is a transit that happens so rarely. It takes 7 years for it to come through. So again, I'm a liar, 14 years for it to come through. So it takes a long time. So where is Aries? Where is the illusion coming in? Where is the disillusionment coming in? Where is the creativity? What part of your life is being lit up for you to be more creative, right? Pluto, every 20 years, okay? Pluto's in Aquarius right now. So what area of your life is transforming over the next 20 years? For me, seventh house of relationships, I'm already deep in it and I still got 20 years of this, right? So it's just knowing this is what these planets represent. So when they visit, where are they visiting and what are they bringing, right? So the big three obviously is the most important part of who you are. Now we're going to move more into like the transits because now you know what the planets are. Now you know how they show up, what sign is it on, and you know where this plays out. What house is it on, right? So if my Mars, my action and my drive is in Aries, which is an impulsive, direct, bold sign, and it's in the 10th house, which is my career, then that means I am a bold, direct action taker when it comes to my career. So you should be able to start piecing together your chart from like an idea of a thing to like, this is what this means for me, right? Retrogrades do happen 3 to 4 times a year. Mercury is that girl, and she loves to come, slow down and make you rethink. But it's one of those things that when it does happen, it affects thought, communication, travel, technology. If you notice in what sign it is, those are the areas and the things that you're going to have to rethink about, slow down on, etc. It's retrograded in Pisces. It just became direct 2 days ago. So what did you learn? What were you forced to revisit? Where did you have to slow down? Retrogrades are not good or bad. I don't believe in good or bad. It's more, these are periods that were meant to guide you inward and have you focus and like assess, is this working or is it not? Right? So for the next 3 to 4 months, we don't have another retrograde, but when we do, where is it happening? What are you expecting to feel? I want you to start thinking in that way. So some of these planets obviously move really slow. They affect generations. And with that, all the four major outer planets are all moving this year. So that's why the astrology has been so intense of like, oh my God, your life is going to change and all this crap is happening. Basically, what it is we are experiencing energy that we have never had in our lifetime. Pluto moves every 20 years. It takes forever, 225 years to make it all the way around. We are literally never going to have Pluto in Aquarius again. This has not happened in over 200 years. Neptune in Aries, that planet moves every 14 years. We have never seen this in our lifetime. The last time this happened was the 1800s. So we can look at history and be like, that's what happened when, but this is a very different flavor of the same thing. So when we're learning astrology, we also want to look at the collective. We want to see like, what are people going through? Because you are experiencing this as you, but it's also affecting your community. Like if there is a drought or if there is a war, or if people are more likely to be losing their minds. This is something you want to be informed on so that you know how to behave and act accordingly, right? So for the next class, this is when we're going to go into how do we bring it all together. And instead of talking about the planets, the houses, and the signs, we're going to start putting together all these little aspects in the middle where the story kind of weaves together. And we're going to go from like, this is what that means to like, oh, so my communication and my career are connected, but it also affects my relationships. Is it positive or is it negative? That's what we're going to kind of dive into the next class. So now we have about 13 minutes, and I'm actually glad it's just you here because you get to ask all the questions. Now, for anybody who did not make it live to class today, you do get to email me questions if you have them. But I'm curious to hear what thoughts came up or what questions you have. And we have 12 minutes for our Q&A.
I actually don't have any specific questions because it's just so much
I
today.
know. I know.
Um,
Okay. And I love that. So let it land, let it absorb. And then if you have any questions, just like everybody else is going to watch the replay, just send me a quick email and then I'll just send you a Loom video. Or if we have time at the end of the next class, then we can go deeper into that.
sure, yeah. I definitely
Awesome.
have to do some studying before next class if I want it to make sense.
Yeah. I mean,
Or
again,
follow
that's
better.
why the idea of teaching astrology in just 1 week or 2 hours feels insane because there's just so much information and you need it all in order to be able to read your own chart.
Yeah. Are we gonna be able to like download your video
Mhm.
recaps? Okay.
Yes. So once I'm done, I'm going to be housing this course online. I have a platform that I pay for, and you guys are going to have all the slides and all the replays built in there.
Okay.
So you have lifetime access, meaning as long as I keep them alive. But yeah, you have lifetime access to watch, to replay, and I'm sure there'll be some way that you can contact me. But the intention is to sell this course ongoing for
Uh-huh.
at least the next year. So you will have access for at least the next year.
Okay. Cool. Because
Awesome.
yeah, I definitely want to. You say certain things, but I can't like write them down quick enough, and
I
they're
know.
not on the slides. But it like it's things that I like make it click
Mhm.
better.
Would it
Uh,
help if I email the slides with the replay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll
Oh,
do
I
that.
don't know if you were doing that or not. I haven't had a chance to look at those.
No, no, that's perfect. But I do. After every class, you usually get an email. So I'm going to send it within the next 24 hours and I'll make sure to include the slides because if they help you, the visual aid is for you guys, not
Yeah.
for me. But if it helps, I'll absolutely include it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions, love?
Well, I had a question that's outside of this
Okay,
class.
so let me stop the recording. And for everybody watching, again, you can send me an email if you have any questions and we'll pick it up next week.